Today I'm going to tell you a story about how I got stuck in San Francisco for about 4 or 5 hours waiting for my flight. Now, in the last episode that I did about how I almost missed my flight from Boston to San Francisco, I of course had to fly back from San Francisco back to Boston. And I stayed in San Francisco Sunday night. I ended up staying in San Francisco Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and then I was going to fly out Wednesday afternoon was when I was going to fly back from San Francisco all the way back to Boston. So I was at my conference and I was taking notes and working. So I had to leave the conference at noontime because my flight was scheduled for 2:20, and it was about only 20 minutes from where the conference was in San Francisco to the airport. Now, I couldn't take the trolley because the trolleys only go about, it's about three trolleys in San Francisco. That's a whole nother story. And they do not, you can't take the trolleys to the airport. So I took the airport shuttle to the airport. And there was no traffic. It was Wednesday afternoon, as I said. It was Wednesday afternoon, and there wasn't a lot of traffic. In fact, there's not really a lot of traffic in San Francisco, from what I could tell. So there was no traffic. We ended up getting to the airport for 12:20. So, should be fine, right? You're supposed to be at the airport 2 hours before your flight. Still good. So I went to check a bag because I decided on the way there, I'd carried my bags, but on the way back, I was tired and I didn't want to carry a lot of stuff with me. So I went to check a bag. So I went over to baggage claim and I brought my bag. Actually, I had 2 bags. So I checked one of the bags and they weighed it. They weighed it to see how much it weighed. And then they had it go through. And it went through, and then they put it on little carts that had wheels and a driver, and they drove it over to the airplane. The woman, she told me that my flight would be delayed because there were lots of thunderstorms over Massachusetts. So I live in Massachusetts. And they're all kind of thunderstorms. And there was wind. And so here's the airport, and there were no flights. The flights were all delayed. So my flight that was for 2:20 was now delayed until 3:20. But she said that I should go to the gate to see because maybe they were going to be able to find out the weather. Maybe the weather cleared up and maybe it got sunny in Massachusetts and maybe we could have our flight earlier. But next I had to go to security. And there were long lines of people. People. And they were all waiting to go through security. So they were all waiting in line to go through security. And they all had to take off their shoes. The shoes had to go in bins. The cell phones had to go in bins. The laptops, our suitcases, our carry-on, smaller suitcases that we were carrying, they all had to go into the bins. and we had to go through the x-ray, and our stuff had to go through x-ray. And so this line took 1 whole hour, 60 minutes. So as I said, I got to the airport at 12:20. I checked my bag. Then it was 12:30. I went through security. Now it was 1:30. If my flight was leaving on time, my flight would have left at 2:20. But it wasn't. Now, after I got through security, now it said it was going to leave at 4:30. So when I left San Francisco, it was noontime, like noontime. And I had eaten lunch, but now I knew that I was going to be flying out from 4:30, and the flight would take 5 hours. No, the flight actually would take 4 hours. Because when you go from San Francisco to Boston, you have the wind blowing, the jet stream, they call it, the jet stream. They name it after a jet, and it helps push the jets. So it takes 4 hours, while when you go from Boston to San Francisco, it takes 5 hours. So if my flight was going to leave at 4:30, I would be going until 8:30 San Francisco time, but it would really be 1:30 a.m. 1:30 would be the time that I would end up landing. And I knew that I was going to need to eat. So again, I walked around and I looked for a place that I could buy something to eat on the plane. So I ended up finding a Chinese restaurant. I had eaten in Chinatown in San Francisco a number of times, and I decided, hey, that sounds good. So I found a Chinese restaurant, and I stood in line. It was about 2 o'clock when I got my food. So I went over to the gate. So after I got my lunch, I went over to the gate. So I went there to wait, and I sat down. Here's me walking through. And they had seats here. So I sat down. And I waited, and I watched the planes and waited until it was time for my flight. I then went over to the woman that worked for JetBlue, because I was taking JetBlue, and I asked her when the flight would be, and she said, oh, actually your gate has changed, so now you have to walk back to another gate. So I had to go and walk over to another gate and wait. And she said that your flight is actually going to leave around 5:30. My flight actually didn't leave. It didn't take off until 6:30. So I was not going to get back to Massachusetts. I wasn't going to get back to Massachusetts until 3:30 a.m. And I decided to go. I ended up buying a pillow. I ended up getting buying a blanket, so I could try to get comfortable and try to sleep. But when I finally got on the plane, it was very uncomfortable, because the seats, although JetBlue says they give more room, and I think they do, they're very tight, and I couldn't sleep. So when I did finally land, when the plane landed, it was 3:30, and I came out in Boston, and I was so tired because I couldn't sleep. So I saw a bench, and I went to sleep on that bench, and I ended up sleeping. Now it was 3:30. I ended up sleeping until 4:30. But then I woke up because all the workers of the airport, they were making all kinds of noise because they're getting ready for the day, and they were making noise and playing loud music. So I got up and I walked over to baggage claim. But I saw that there was cots there, and these cots had people sleeping on them. People that also got stranded in Boston and couldn't fly out. So there were people sleeping, and there was an empty cot. So I went and slept on this cot because I still was so tired. I was too tired to drive, and I drove myself to Boston, so I had to drive back home. So I slept longer. And I slept there for about an hour. So it was about 5:30. Now it was 5:30 in the very, very early morning. So it was 5:30 in the very early morning. So I got up and I walked over to the exit. And I waited for the shuttle. I had to wait longer, and it was about 5:45 when the shuttle came, and it took 15 minutes. So then it was 6 a.m. when it got to the parking garage. And I walked in. I walked into the parking garage, and I got in my car, but I was too tired, so I slept. And I slept for maybe 2 hours. And then I got up. Actually, I didn't get up. I just woke up. I woke up, and I started to drive. Here I'm in Boston, and I had to drive home. But I was really tired, and it was only like 10 minutes, and I knew I can't drive. So I got off at an exit. It's an exit. And it was for a town called Newton. And I drove around, and I found a parking lot with cars. And it was a church in Newton. And I slept. And I ended up sleeping there for about an hour. So I think it was maybe like 9 a.m. And a woman, she came out of the church, and she walked over to my car and she knocked. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Oh, I'm really tired. I didn't sleep. I was flying through the night and I can't drive home." Ended up not being able to sleep after that too much. So I got in the car and started driving, and I went to buy a coffee. And I drank the coffee, and I drove all the way home. I got home. I got into bed. And I slept for about 4 hours until my cat started to walk on me and decided it was time for me to wake up. Well, thank you. If you liked the story, please put the thumbs up. Please subscribe to our channel when we have some new stories. I'd like to thank LTV for lending the equipment, and I'd like to thank Pablo for inspiring us to make this channel. Thank you, and until next time.